Want to buy your next home before selling your current one and still wind up with a lower payment? That's where recasting comes in. I'm Rebecca, aka the Mortgage Mentor, and for over 20 years, I've been sharing everything that I know about home buying and mortgages to help people make smart decisions so they can do what they want in real estate. Be sure to subscribe and comment with any questions as we go through this. But a question that I'm getting a lot right now is around recasting. And what recasting is a way to change your mortgage without refinancing after you have already bought the home. So essentially what it is after you've closed on the home and your mortgage is finalized, maybe it's a couple months, maybe it's a year, maybe it's a little bit longer, but you take a lump sum of money, apply it to the principal, and your payment gets recalculated. Now, in terms of a normal process with most loans, you can pretty much always pay extra towards the principal. Most loans don't have prepayment penalties anymore. So if you are maybe throwing an extra couple hundred on your payment, maybe you're doubling up, making biweekly payments, anything you want to do to lower that loan balance and pay less interest over time is available to you. Now, recasting is different though, because what you're doing is instead of just a little bit here or a little bit there, you're taking a large chunk of money and you're putting it towards the principal as part of an official process, which is called recasting. It is not a refinance because there's not a new rate, there's not a new loan, and other than really the processing fee that it takes to do a recast, there aren't the standard closing costs. The reason that this matters now and the reason that a lot more people are talking about it is simply because most homeowners are sitting on a good amount of equity in their homes and they're trying to figure out, how do I get from here, the home that I own now, to the home that I want to buy without being able to take the equity that's in this home and apply it to this new purchase. So the way that a lot of people will do it is instead of maybe getting a home equity line of credit or tapping into other assets like, stocks, bonds, 401k, all these other things that are available for a down payment, but maybe people don't want to do it. All these things that are available as regular down payment, but maybe some people don't want to tap into that because there could be tax implications or don't want to pull money out of the market. What you can do is put 5 to 10% down, maybe whatever is available currently in checking and savings, money that's already liquid. You don't have to go through a whole bunch of extra steps in order to access it. Then what you're able to do is once you own the home, you're going to apply this large down payment and have the payment recast. The other reason that this is being asked for right now and the reason that it's helpful right now, because a lot of times if a buyer wants to purchase a new home and use the equity from their sale, then they may have to make that purchase contingent. And that just means that to the seller, as a buyer, you are telling them, hey, this purchase is contingent upon my sale. Well, as a seller, sometimes they might not want to accept a contract that says that. So that's why it's helpful to understand that you can put a little bit less down and pay more later. Again, just so your offer is as competitive as possible so you can get the home that you want and later you can get the payment that you want. In terms of the step-by-step process, one thing to keep in mind is this is usually only going to be available for conventional loans. So if you have an FHA, VA, USDA, and most jumbo loans, they do not allow for a recast. So it is going to be your sort of standard conventional, boring center of the, bullseye kind of standard conventional mortgage. Also, one of the rules to keep in mind is that you do have to make a lump sum. And a lot of times there's going to be some minimum threshold of the payment that needs to be made. $5,000, $10,000 is what I have seen in the past. It is going to vary company to company in terms of whichever mortgage company you make your payment to, they will have their own policies around recasting. They also may require that you make a couple payments before they will process a recast. So it's not uncommon to see that perhaps you might need to make at least 2 payments before a recast can be processed. And usually once you've requested it, it's going to take about 30 to 45 days for that lump sum payment to be applied to your principal and the payment reduced. And lastly, there's usually a small administration fee, anywhere from about $250 to $500 that is paid when you recast. So the process of doing that, you don't want to just send in your money and say, yes, I want you to apply this to my loan. You would want to call your current mortgage company, your current servicer, and say, what are your policies? How long do I have to have this mortgage? How much do I need to pay? What is the process? Because you want to make sure that your intention is understood by your mortgage company, that you're sending them this money to have your payment recalculated. So kind of as an example of what these numbers might look like, if let's say that your loan amount is $400,000 at a 6.75% rate, the principal and interest payment is going to be right around $2,500. So around $2,600. And then you decide to send in a principal payment. You sold your old home and you send in $100,000 as a lump sum. The new balance is now around $300,000, which means your payment is going to be lowered to right under around $1,950. That will give you savings of around $650 a month without having to refinance or have the extra expenses of a refinance. Pros for this benefits are that you get a lower monthly payment. So it is kind of meant to be, if you think about it, almost kind of like a forward bridge loan. So you're not necessarily tapping into the equity of your current home. You're going to save that till later and apply it to the mortgage. It also allows you to keep your current rate. So you're not having to get a new loan, get a new rate, unless you want to, unless rates are lower where it makes sense to refinance. In that case, that's a different conversation. But if you like your rate and if your rate is still competitive, then it does allow you to get a lower payment without refinancing or the cost of refinancing. Now, some of the things that you want to watch out for is that not every mortgage servicer will do a recast. So that is a question that you want to ask and make sure that your lender is going to allow it once you close. You also have to obviously have a lump sum to put down. So it's making sure that you understand as far as where that money is going to be coming from, how it's going to be applied, and when it can be applied. It also doesn't shorten the term. So if you have a 30-year mortgage, you're going to keep that 30-year mortgage. So it doesn't necessarily escalate the term of your mortgage, although by applying that lump sum, you will pay less interest. You are going to naturally then pay that mortgage down and eventually pay that mortgage off sooner. And the last thing is, if you are putting 20% down, then you will have mortgage insurance. Now, if you have monthly mortgage insurance, some mortgage servicers, some mortgage companies will require that you make a certain number of payments until they will process a recast and remove that mortgage insurance. But most of the time, as long as you're putting at least enough down where you're at that 20% equity mark and your loan balance is 80% of the sales price or the appraised value, then that will go ahead and process a recast. So in closing, you essentially want to make sure that you understand the difference between one company to another and what your mortgage company will allow when it comes to a recast. How long do you have to keep the mortgage? How many payments do you have to make? How much do you have to put down? And what is going to be the cost in order to process that recast? If you're navigating buying and selling at the same time, sometimes it kind of feels sneaky stressful because you've already bought a home before, so you feel like you should know this. But if you haven't bought and sold at the same time, particularly in a market like we're having right now, it can be stressful. But the best way to head that off is to have a really sound strategy. So if you have any questions on how this could work for you, please reach out. And if you found this helpful, make sure that you comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.